Marcus Williams adjusted the cuff of his crisp white shirt as he stepped out of the black luxury sedan. The morning sun reflected off the office tower's glass facade, painting the building with a golden glow. It should have been a normal day, he thought. A normal board meeting like any other. But something in the air told him it wouldn't be. The lobby was quiet, unusually quiet for a Monday morning. Marcus noticed the receptionist, a young woman with neatly tied hair and a polite smile, glance at him nervously. She avoided his eyes, her fingers fidgeting over the keyboard. "Good morning," Marcus said calmly, his voice steady but warm. She nodded quickly and returned to her work. As he walked toward the elevators, whispers floated across the lobby. Employees in smart suits turned their heads subtly as he passed, their eyes flicking toward him, then away. Marcus had been CEO for just over a year, but he had felt these subtle judgments before. He was a black man leading a company that had long been dominated by others who looked different from him. The glass ceiling had been invisible, but it had been there. Now, it felt like cracks were forming in the old walls of the office culture. He stepped into the elevator, pressing the button for the top floor. The doors slid closed smoothly, and for a moment Marcus was alone with his thoughts. He thought about the meeting ahead. The board had called him in to discuss the company's performance and upcoming strategies. He was confident in his preparation, his plans solid and clear. Yet, a small knot of unease had formed in his stomach. The elevator dinged, and the doors opened onto the top floor. The hallway was lined with framed awards and photographs of past CEOs. All men, all white. Marcus paused briefly, taking in the contrast. He had worked hard to reach this point. He had earned this role, his achievements built from years of dedication, sacrifice, and persistence. And yet, as he approached the boardroom, he could feel the tension before he even stepped inside. "Marcus," a familiar voice called from behind the glass door. It was Helen, a senior manager who had been with the company for more than 20 years. Her tone was polite, almost deferential, but there was something in her eyes that made him stop. "Good morning, Helen," Marcus said, smiling lightly. He expected to be greeted with the usual cordiality of a board meeting, perhaps a handshake or a nod. "Sir, I'm afraid you'll need to wait outside for a few minutes," she said, her voice careful, measured. Marcus froze for a moment. "Wait, outside?" His eyebrows rose. "Excuse me?" Helen's expression remained calm. "The board, they'd like a few minutes alone before you join. It won't be long, I promise." Marcus felt a flicker of surprise, followed quickly by a surge of controlled anger. He had been CEO for over a year, yet here he was, asked to wait outside, as if he were some visitor or a subordinate. He took a deep breath, keeping his voice even. "Very well," he said, stepping back. "I'll wait." He moved to the seating area outside the boardroom. Plush chairs and a small coffee table sat in the middle of the room, giving the impression of comfort and casual conversation. But Marcus's eyes didn't linger on the decor. He watched the staff moving through the hallway, their whispers sharp, their glances quick and uneasy. It wasn't just Helen. The entire floor seemed tense, almost as if they had been expecting trouble, and trouble had arrived in the form of him. Marcus sat down in one of the chairs. He placed his hands on his knees and closed his eyes for a moment. He could feel the weight of the room, the judgment, the skepticism. He had faced this before, being underestimated, being doubted, being seen as different in a place where leadership had rarely looked like him. And yet, Marcus knew something important. The real power was not in letting anger take over, but in keeping calm and acting with purpose. 5 minutes passed slowly. Marcus could hear the faint murmur of voices from the boardroom. Occasionally, someone would glance his way, perhaps realizing he was still there. He didn't move, didn't react. He sat silently, letting the whispers and unease fill the space. As he waited, memories surfaced. He remembered the early days of his career, walking into offices where he was the only black person in the room. He remembered colleagues who doubted his abilities, mentors who ignored his potential, and countless moments when he had to prove himself again and again. Each memory was a reminder of why he had worked so hard, why he had persevered. It was not just for himself, it was for every young professional who might look at him and see a possibility that had been denied before. He opened his eyes and looked around the hallway. The staff seemed smaller now, their confidence fragile. Marcus realized that this moment, their attempt to make him wait, to assert control over him, was a reflection of their fear of being held accountable, fear of a black CEO who was not only capable, but unafraid to lead. Marcus smiled faintly, almost imperceptibly. He stood up, straightened his shoulders, and walked toward the boardroom door. The whispers grew louder as he approached, but he did not falter. Every step he took was measured, deliberate. He was no longer just waiting. He was preparing to claim his space and remind everyone of the power of respect and leadership. Helen looked at him nervously as he approached. "Sir," she began, but Marcus held up a hand gently. "I'll handle this," he said softly, but firmly. He took a deep breath and pushed the door open, ready to enter a room that had tried to deny him. For the first time, he felt a calm excitement. The boardroom was about to see that Marcus Williams was not a man to be underestimated, and the lesson would be unforgettable. Outside, the staff continued to whisper. Inside, Marcus was about to make history, though they did not yet know it. Marcus stepped back into the hallway, just outside the boardroom. The soft hum of fluorescent lights mixed with distant murmurs from staff working at their desks. He closed his eyes for a moment, feeling the cool air brush against his face. His mind was sharp, focused, and unyielding. He remembered every step that had brought him here. Long nights studying business plans, countless meetings where he had to prove himself, moments of doubt that others had tried to plant in his mind. He thought about his childhood. Growing up, in a modest neighborhood, Marcus had faced skepticism from almost everyone around him. Teachers who doubted his intelligence, peers who thought he didn't belong, people who judged him because of the color of his skin before they saw the strength of his mind. Those experiences had shaped him, had taught him patience, resilience, and the importance of standing firm in the face of disrespect. Now, years later, he found himself in a position many dreamed of but few achieved. CEO of a thriving company, respected in the industry, but still underestimated by the very people who worked for him. They had tried to sideline him, asking him to wait outside, as if his presence wasn't worthy of respect. Marcus felt a small spark of anger rise inside him, but he didn't let it take control. He let it fuel his resolve instead. Sitting in the empty hallway, Marcus observed the office around him. He noticed little details he had overlooked before. The slight stiffness in the posture of his senior managers, the nervous glances exchanged between colleagues, the quiet tension that hung in the air. It was as if the staff knew they had crossed a line but didn't yet realize the consequences. Marcus reflected on the power of perception. In business, perception often carried as much weight as reality. People judged him for being different, for not fitting the old image of leadership in this office. But perception could be changed, Marcus knew, and he intended to change it. Not with anger, not with threats, but with decisive action. He stood and began pacing slowly, hands clasped, behind his back. 5 minutes might not seem like much, but in those moments, a lot could be calculated, planned, and observed. He considered the structure of the team, the hierarchy, the dynamics that had allowed disrespect to grow. The more he thought, the more clear it became. This was not just a minor incident. It was a reflection of a deeper problem, one that required immediate and thorough correction. Marcus remembered the first time he had been underestimated by a colleague. They had dismissed his idea during a project pitch, claiming it was too ambitious. Marcus had listened calmly, explained his strategy in detail, and delivered results beyond their expectations. The lesson had stayed with him. Results speak, louder than words, and integrity carries more weight than ego. He glanced toward the boardroom door. Inside, he could hear muffled voices, the sounds of discussion and planning. He didn't need to know exactly what was happening in there. The staff had already shown their true selves outside the room. Their disrespect, their fear, their whispers, they spoke volumes. Marcus realized that action was necessary, not conversation. Respect could not be demanded with words alone. It had to be earned and reinforced through leadership. Sitting down briefly again, he allowed himself a quiet moment of reflection. He thought about the people who had truly supported him, mentors who had seen his potential, friends who had encouraged him to persevere, family who had always believed in him even when the world doubted. Their faith reminded him that leadership was not about being liked, it was about doing what was right, even when it was uncomfortable. Marcus's mind shifted to the future. He imagined a company where professionalism, competence, and respect were the foundation, a place where employees knew the value of accountability, where ambition was encouraged but arrogance was corrected. He saw himself leading such a company, not as a figurehead, but as someone who would shape culture, inspire excellence, and demand integrity. A small smile crossed his face. He wasn't angry anymore, not truly. Anger would only cloud his judgment. What he felt now was clarity, a quiet, steady certainty that the situation would be corrected and that it would be corrected decisively. 5 minutes had been enough. Now it was time to act. Marcus rose from the chair. He straightened his jacket, adjusted his tie, and took a deep breath. Every step he took back toward the boardroom felt deliberate, measured, and commanding. He wasn't rushing. He was preparing to enter the room as a leader, not a visitor. He passed the staff working nearby. Their whispers ceased almost instantly as they noticed his approach. Eyes that had once looked away now followed him, full of surprise, uncertainty, and perhaps a hint of fear. Marcus didn't glance at them. He didn't need to. His presence alone conveyed the message. I see everything. I know everything. Respect is expected. Helen stepped aside, opening the door for him. Sir, she said softly, her voice betraying nervousness. Marcus simply nodded. Inside the boardroom, the atmosphere was thick. Marcus could see the tension in the faces of the staff. Some looked guilty, others shocked. He walked to the center of the room and paused, letting his gaze sweep over everyone present. For a moment, no one spoke. The silence was powerful, almost tangible. Marcus finally broke the silence. I was asked to wait outside, he said calmly, his voice firm but not angry. 5 minutes. That was enough time to show me how some of you view leadership, respect, and professionalism. And the truth is clear. Some things cannot be ignored. Some behavior cannot be excused. He paused, letting his words sink in. The staff shifted uncomfortably, glances exchanged across the room. Marcus could see the realization dawning on them. This wasn't just about waiting outside. This was about principles, accountability, and consequences. Marcus smiled faintly. He knew what had to be done next. The situation demanded decisive action, and he was ready to take it. The respect of the office, the integrity of the company, and his own leadership were at stake. He took a final breath, feeling calm, collected, and determined. The next few minutes would change everything, but it would be done on his terms, with clarity, justice, and unwavering confidence. Outside the boardroom, the whispers had stopped. Inside, Marcus prepared to remind everyone why he had earned his place at the top. Marcus took one last steadying breath before stepping fully into the boardroom. The hum of the air conditioning and the faint tapping of keyboards were the only sounds in the tense room. All eyes turned toward him, wide and uncertain, as if the very air had shifted the moment he entered. He could feel the weight of their judgment and fear, and yet Marcus remained calm, his posture straight and commanding. The boardroom was a long, sleek space filled with polished tables and high-backed chairs. Several staff members sat at their desks, stiff and uneasy, while a few others stood near the walls, shifting from foot to foot. Whispers had ceased entirely. Marcus knew that everyone there was acutely aware of what had just happened outside. He had been asked to wait. That small act, seemingly polite, had spoken volumes about how they perceived him. He paused in the center of the room, letting his gaze sweep across the faces of his employees. Some avoided eye contact, staring at the table, the floor, or their hands. A few glanced at each other nervously, as if seeking silent reassurance. Marcus could see the tension etched in every line of their posture. They had underestimated him, and now they were beginning to understand that he was not a man to be ignored or dismissed. "I was asked to wait outside," Marcus said, his voice calm, clear, and steady. The words hung in the room like a silent bell echoing off the walls. 5 minutes. 5 minutes was all it took to reveal what many of you think about leadership, respect, and accountability. He took a deliberate step closer to the long table, his gaze moving from one person to another. "Some of you thought you could question my authority. Some of you thought you could undermine the company by showing disrespect, whether subtle or obvious, and some of you perhaps didn't even realize what you were doing." The room remained quiet, though tension hung thick in the air. A few employees shifted nervously in their seats. One young analyst, sitting near the corner, fidgeted with a pen, eyes darting between Marcus and the floor. Marcus didn't flinch. Every movement, every glance was a small test of his patience. But he had patience. He had discipline. And above all, he had the experience to know that leadership required more than anger. It required decisive action. He continued, his voice measured. "Leadership is not about titles nor about appearances. Leadership is about responsibility, accountability, and respect. Respect for the company, respect for your colleagues, and respect for the people who trusted you to do your jobs properly. Unfortunately, it is clear that many of you have forgotten these principles." Some staff members exchanged worried glances. Marcus saw the realization forming in their eyes. They understood that this was not just a conversation. It was a reckoning. He had watched too long while disrespect and arrogance quietly eroded the company culture. It had taken something as small as asking him to wait outside to reveal the deeper problem. Marcus paused, letting the silence fill the room. His calmness carried weight. It was not anger that demanded attention, but authority, certainty, and the quiet power of someone who knew what needed to be done. "I will not tolerate behavior that threatens the integrity of this company," he said, his voice firm but not raised. "Actions have consequences, decisions have outcomes, and this situation requires immediate correction." He looked around again, seeing their discomfort deepen. Some swallowed hard, others fidgeted. Marcus could see the fear mingled with a growing sense of understanding. They had underestimated him, yes, but now they were beginning to grasp the reality of his leadership. "I have considered the situation carefully," Marcus continued, his words deliberate. "And I have made a decision. It is necessary for the future of this company and for the integrity of our work environment. Effective immediately, the current team will no longer continue in their positions." A collective gasp rippled through the room. The young analyst dropped his pen, and a few people covered their mouths, shocked. Marcus remained calm, his eyes steady, scanning the room to ensure his words were understood clearly. "This decision is not personal," he said firmly. "It is about accountability, respect, and the standards that every employee must meet to be part of this company. Your actions, whether intentional or not, demonstrated a lack of these qualities. And as CEO, it is my responsibility to ensure that this company operates with integrity, efficiency, and respect at every level." The shock in the room was palpable. Some staff members stood frozen, unable to process the news. Others began muttering quietly, though Marcus ignored the murmurs, focusing instead on his own purpose. He had spent years building his career, fighting against prejudice, and proving his competence. He had reached a position where he could no longer allow mediocrity or disrespect to persist. He walked slowly toward the nearest employee, maintaining eye contact. "I understand this may be difficult to hear," he said softly but firmly. "But leadership requires difficult decisions. This is one of those moments. You will be given support to transition, but the changes are final. The company will rebuild, and the new team will reflect the values that this organization needs to thrive." Some employees had tears in their eyes. Others sat in stunned silence. Marcus's words were not cruel. They were necessary. Leadership, he knew, was not about popularity. It was about doing what was right, even when it was hard. He would bear the discomfort, but he would not compromise on principles. He turned slightly, addressing the remaining staff who were still trying to process the news. "I hope that each of you takes this as a moment to reflect. Respect is earned, not demanded. Accountability is expected, not optional. And professionalism is required, not negotiable. This is your opportunity to learn, grow, and improve, even if it is outside this company." Marcus straightened, feeling a sense of quiet satisfaction. The room was tense, yes, but it was also clear. Respect had been asserted, authority had been demonstrated, and the company's future was no longer threatened by complacency or disrespect. He took a step back, letting the words settle. The employees would leave, some humbled, some regretful, but all would remember this moment. Marcus knew that true leadership was about results, integrity, and vision. And this moment, though difficult, was the first step toward a stronger, more accountable future. As he exited the room to let the staff process the news fully, Marcus felt calm, confident, and ready. He had faced doubt and disrespect before. He had overcome obstacles that others thought impossible. And now he had taken the first step in rebuilding the company on the foundation of respect and excellence. Outside, the whispers began again, but this time they were tinged with awe and understanding. Inside, Marcus had reminded everyone of the simple truth. Leadership was not about waiting. It was about action, decisiveness, and the courage to do what was right. The hallway outside the boardroom felt unusually silent. The staff who had just been confronted were now slowly leaving, their footsteps echoing softly against the polished floors. Some walked with their heads down, avoiding eye contact, while others cast nervous glances around the office, clearly uncertain about how this moment would follow them. Marcus watched quietly, his arms folded, letting them process the gravity of the situation. He did not rush them. Respect, he knew, could not be demanded. It had to be understood. Marcus's mind replayed the events of the past hour. The whispers, the hesitant gestures, the polite attempt to sideline him, it had all revealed something deeper about the culture of the company. He had asked for calm, he had asked for patience, but most importantly, he had asked for accountability. And the responses he received had made the decision inevitable. The employees who remained near their desks looked unsure, shifting their weight from foot to foot. Marcus approached one of them, a senior manager named Jonathan, who had been particularly smug in his attempts to assert authority over him. Jonathan's confident posture faltered as Marcus stopped in front of him. "Jonathan," Marcus began, his voice calm but unwavering, I know this is difficult to hear, but I need you to understand why this was necessary. Leadership is about integrity. Leadership is about respect. And the company cannot function if those who work here do not uphold these standards. Jonathan swallowed hard, his eyes flicking to the floor. Marcus could see the conflict in his expression, the mixture of regret, fear, and the faint spark of understanding. He nodded slowly, finally grasping the lesson Marcus wanted to impart. "Yes, sir," he whispered. "I understand." Marcus stepped back, giving him space. He had no desire to humiliate anyone unnecessarily. The point had been made. The message had been delivered. The company needed a clean slate. And now it was time to look forward, to rebuild with intention, purpose, and clarity. As he walked toward the center of the office floor, Marcus noticed the subtle shift in atmosphere. The whispers had stopped, replaced with a quiet attentiveness. Employees who had once shown arrogance were now subdued, clearly aware that the company's future would no longer tolerate mediocrity or disrespect. Marcus felt a quiet satisfaction. He was not here to punish. He was here to shape a culture where professionalism, accountability, and respect would thrive. He made his way to his private office, a space overlooking the city skyline. The view always reminded him why he had worked so hard to get here. From this vantage point, he could see not just the city, but the opportunities ahead, the possibilities of growth, the chance to reshape the company into something stronger and better. Marcus sat at his desk and opened his laptop. He began drafting a plan for recruitment, focusing on individuals who embodied the values he wanted to instill in the company. Competence, integrity, teamwork, and respect would be the foundation. Each position would be carefully considered, ensuring that every new hire aligned with the standards he expected. This was more than a personnel decision. It was a cultural transformation. As he worked, he reflected on the lessons of the day. Leadership was not about popularity or avoiding conflict. It was about making hard decisions, even when they were uncomfortable. It was about protecting the company, its employees, and its mission from the consequences of neglect, arrogance, or disrespect. And it was about showing by example what true professionalism looked like. By midday, Marcus had compiled a preliminary list of potential candidates for the new team. He reached out to trusted contacts, explaining the situation and inviting skilled, motivated professionals to join the company. He emphasized that this was a unique opportunity to be part of a team that valued excellence and accountability. Meanwhile, the remaining staff began to settle into the office, tentative but aware that the culture had changed. Marcus made a point to greet each of them personally, acknowledging their presence and encouraging them to reflect on their roles. He wanted them to understand that while some had been removed, the company still believed in their potential if they were willing to learn, adapt, and grow. By late afternoon, the office had a quieter, more focused energy. The tension was still there, but it had shifted from fear to reflection. Employees were thinking about their responsibilities, their contributions, and the standards they needed to uphold. Marcus walked through the floor, observing quietly, noting areas that needed improvement, and considering how to support his team in achieving their best work. He paused near the window, looking out at the city again. The events of the morning had been difficult, but they were necessary. He had removed complacency, arrogance, and disrespect from the company. In their place, he would cultivate dedication, professionalism, and accountability. The foundation was being rebuilt brick by brick, decision by decision. Marcus's phone buzzed. It was a message from a former colleague, congratulating him on his decisive actions. Marcus smiled faintly. It was encouraging, but he did not let it distract him. This was only the beginning. The company needed structure, focus, and vision, and he was ready to provide all three. As the day drew to a close, Marcus called a short meeting with the remaining employees. He spoke to them about the importance of accountability, teamwork, and mutual respect. He shared his vision for the future, emphasizing that success was possible only if everyone upheld the values he had outlined. "I know this has been a difficult day," he said, his tone firm but supportive. "But I want you to understand that this is not about punishment. This is about creating a workplace where everyone can thrive, where respect and professionalism are expected, and where excellence is the standard. The company's future depends on it, and so does yours." The employees listened quietly, absorbing his words. They could see his sincerity, his dedication, and his unwavering commitment to the company. Marcus knew that leadership was most effective when it inspired reflection and growth, not just fear. As the office emptied and the evening approached, Marcus remained at his desk, reviewing plans for the next steps. Recruitment, restructuring, and cultural reinforcement were just the beginning. The work ahead was challenging, but he was ready. He had faced obstacles before, overcome prejudice, and led with integrity. This moment, though difficult, was another step toward building a company that reflected his values and vision. Marcus looked out the window one last time before leaving. The city stretched below him, full of possibilities. He felt a quiet sense of satisfaction, knowing that the first steps had been taken and the company's future was now in capable hands, his hands. The day had tested him, challenged him, and reminded him of the importance of decisive action. But he had proven to himself and to everyone else that true leadership required courage, clarity, and unwavering commitment. The next morning, Marcus arrived at the office early, the sunlight just beginning to spill over the city skyline. The air felt fresh, almost symbolic of a new beginning. After yesterday's upheaval, the office was quieter than usual, but not tense in the same way. The staff who remained seemed reflective, cautious, and more attentive. Marcus knew that change was a process, and the first step had been taken. Now it was time to build the future. He walked through the office floor, greeting employees individually. Each nod, each polite smile carried a subtle but important acknowledgement. They understood that things had changed. Marcus noticed a new focus in their posture, in the way they held themselves. It was as if they were stepping into a new mindset, one shaped by accountability and respect. Back in his office, Marcus reviewed his recruitment plan. The company needed skilled professionals who not only had talent, but also aligned with the values he wanted to instill. Competence, integrity, teamwork, and professionalism would form the foundation of the new team. He made a list of potential candidates, carefully evaluating each one not only on skills but also on character. Marcus sent out the first wave of messages. Each was precise, professional, and inviting. "We are seeking individuals who value respect, accountability, and excellence. If you are ready to contribute to a dynamic, forward-thinking team, we would like to meet you." He knew the right people would respond. Those who were motivated not just by a paycheck, but by a desire to be part of something meaningful. Meanwhile, back on the office floor, the remaining employees began adjusting to the new reality. Some were nervous about how their performance would be evaluated. Others were quietly determined to show that they could meet Marcus's standards. The atmosphere was shifting from apprehension to purpose. Marcus could feel it. The first seeds of a stronger, more professional culture were taking root. He called a short team meeting. The employees gathered, unsure at first, but attentive. Marcus stood at the head of the room, calm, confident, and clear. "Yesterday was difficult," he began, "but it was necessary. Change is never easy, and it always challenges us. The company needs a culture of accountability, respect, and professionalism. We are building that culture now, together." He outlined his vision for the company. He spoke about collaboration, responsibility, and the importance of working with integrity. Every decision we make, every action we take, shapes the future of this company. We cannot afford to ignore poor behavior or complacency. Excellence is not optional. It is the standard, and I know that each of you is capable of meeting that standard." Marcus paused, letting his words sink in. The room was silent, but it was a reflective silence, not one of fear. Employees were absorbing the message, recognizing the challenge, but also seeing the opportunity. Marcus's presence alone commanded attention, but his words carried substance. Leadership, he knew, was about clarity and inspiration, not intimidation. After the meeting, Marcus returned to his office to continue planning the recruitment process. He had identified a few candidates he wanted to interview immediately. These were individuals with proven track records, strong ethics, and the ability to work in teams. Marcus believed that the right people could elevate the company not only through their skills, but also through their example. The first candidate arrived by mid-morning, a young woman named Laura, known in the industry for her innovation and integrity, stepped into Marcus's office. She greeted him confidently but respectfully, shaking his hand firmly. Marcus noticed her calm demeanor and direct eye contact. She was exactly the type of professional he wanted in his team. "Thank you for coming, Laura," Marcus said, gesturing for her to sit. "I want to be honest with you. Our company has recently undergone some changes. We are rebuilding, refocusing, and looking for individuals who can contribute to a culture of respect, accountability, and excellence." Laura nodded, listening intently. "I understand, sir. I appreciate the opportunity. I value professionalism and teamwork, and I want to be part of a company that shares those values." Marcus smiled faintly. "That is exactly the mindset we need. I believe you could play a critical role in helping us achieve our vision." The interview continued, but Marcus could already see the alignment of values and skills. By the end of the day, he had met with several strong candidates, each bringing energy, expertise, and a sense of purpose. The foundation of a new, competent, and motivated team was beginning to form. Meanwhile, the remaining staff had begun adjusting to their new reality. They were more focused on their work, more careful in their interactions, and more conscious of the company's expectations. Marcus made a point to observe quietly, noting small improvements and offering guidance where needed. Leadership was not only about bold decisions, it was also about nurturing growth. By evening, Marcus sat in his office reviewing the day's progress. The office had already started feeling different. The energy was lighter but purposeful, more attentive but less tense. Marcus knew that building a culture took time, but the first steps were promising. The right people were in place, the wrong influences had been removed, and the company's vision was clearer than ever. He reflected on the morning. Change had begun not through fear or intimidation, but through decisive action and clarity of purpose. Marcus had faced the challenge with calm authority, and now he was seeing the fruits of that approach. The company was no longer just a collection of employees. It was becoming a team united by shared values and goals. As he prepared to leave for the evening, Marcus looked out over the city. The day had been long, challenging, and at times uncomfortable, but it had been necessary. He knew the work ahead would be even more demanding. Recruitment, team building, and cultural reinforcement would require patience, insight, and steadfast commitment. But Marcus was ready. He had faced challenges before, overcome obstacles that seemed insurmountable, and led with integrity. For the first time in a long while, he felt a sense of quiet optimism. The company was no longer held back by complacency or disrespect. A new era was beginning, one founded on accountability, professionalism, and respect. And at the center of it all, Marcus knew, was leadership built not just on authority, but on vision, courage, and unwavering commitment to doing what was right. The following week brought a renewed energy to the office. The morning sunlight poured through the tall windows, illuminating the polished floors and casting a warm glow over the desks. Marcus arrived early, as always, feeling a sense of purpose. Yesterday had been promising, but today would be about solidifying the changes he had begun. The new team members began arriving, each one carefully selected for their skills, integrity, and work ethic. Marcus greeted them personally, shaking hands and offering words of encouragement. He noticed the confident professional manner in which they carried themselves. These were individuals who respected both the company and themselves, ready to contribute to a culture of excellence. The remaining employees watched silently from their desks. Some still held traces of apprehension, but others had begun to recognize the potential for positive change. Marcus could see their curiosity, their hope, and even a subtle admiration. They were witnessing not just leadership, but transformation. Marcus called a short morning meeting. The new team and the remaining staff gathered in the boardroom, their expressions a mix of anticipation and cautious optimism. Marcus stood at the front, calm and composed. "Welcome, everyone," he began. "We are beginning a new chapter in this company's story. It is a chapter built on respect, accountability, and excellence. Each of you has been chosen because you share these values, and I trust that you will contribute to a culture where everyone can thrive." He paused, letting his words sink in. Yesterday and the days before have been challenging, but they were necessary. We have learned that respect and professionalism cannot be taken for granted. They must be upheld by every member of this team. From this day forward, these standards will guide our actions and decisions. The room was quiet, but the silence was different now. It was a silence of attention, of reflection, and of anticipation. Marcus could see it in their eyes. They understood that leadership required action, and they were ready to follow someone who led with integrity and clarity. After the meeting, Marcus began pairing new team members with the remaining staff to foster collaboration and mentorship. He encouraged communication, the sharing of ideas, and the demonstration of skills. Each employee was given responsibilities that matched their strengths, ensuring that everyone had an opportunity to contribute meaningfully to the company's success. Throughout the morning, Marcus observed quietly. He noted the subtle changes in behavior. Employees who had once been hesitant now spoke confidently, sharing ideas and suggestions. The new team brought energy and focus, their professionalism inspiring the remaining staff to match their commitment. Marcus felt a quiet satisfaction. The culture he envisioned was taking shape, piece by piece, interaction by interaction. By midday, the office had a lively, productive energy. Discussions were focused, ideas were flowing, and Marcus could sense a sense of pride growing among the employees. He walked through the floor, stopping occasionally to offer guidance, praise, or a question that prompted deeper thinking. His presence was steady, reinforcing the culture he was cultivating without dominating it. During lunch, Marcus invited the new team and selected staff members to a small gathering in the break area. Over sandwiches and coffee, he spoke informally about the company's vision, the importance of collaboration, and the value of integrity. He listened to their thoughts and concerns, validating their ideas and offering insights. These informal moments were as important as the formal meetings. They built trust, connection, and loyalty. By mid-afternoon, tangible results of the new structure began to appear. Projects that had previously stalled due to inefficiency or miscommunication were progressing smoothly. Employees were taking initiative, solving problems proactively, and demonstrating the accountability Marcus had emphasized. The office was no longer just a place of work. It was becoming a team, a community united by shared values. Marcus took a brief moment at his office window to observe the city below. The skyline was alive with movement, and he felt a sense of parallel growth. Just as the city thrived through coordination, effort, and purpose, so too would his company. He knew the process would take time, but the foundation was now strong. Integrity, professionalism, and respect were guiding principles, and he was confident that the company would continue to flourish. As the day drew to a close, Marcus called a final meeting with both new and remaining staff. "I am proud of what we have accomplished today," he said. "This is only the beginning. The work ahead will challenge us, but together we will build a company that not only succeeds but inspires. Your actions, your dedication, and your respect for one another will shape our future." He looked around the room, meeting each pair of eyes with a calm determination. "Remember, leadership is not just about authority. It is about setting examples, upholding standards, and making difficult decisions when necessary. Each of you has a role in this journey, and I trust that you will rise to the occasion." The employees left the boardroom with a sense of renewed purpose. There was excitement in their steps and a quiet pride in their expressions. Marcus could feel the shift. He had not only removed the obstacles of the past, but he had also instilled a vision for the future. Back in his office, Marcus reflected on the week. The company had faced challenges, but it was now stronger, more focused, and more aligned with his principles. He had removed disrespect, replaced it with competence and integrity, and fostered a culture that encouraged growth. The results were already visible in the office's energy, the collaboration of the team, and the pride in their work. Marcus knew the journey was far from over. There would be obstacles, and maintaining the culture would require constant attention. But he was ready. He had faced prejudice, skepticism, and doubt throughout his life, and he had emerged stronger each time. This company, too, would grow stronger under his leadership. He closed his laptop, feeling a sense of calm satisfaction. The office lights dimmed as the employees finished their work and left for the day. Marcus remained at his desk for a few moments, looking out over the city skyline once more. He felt a quiet pride, not just in the company's achievements, but in the fact that he had taken action when it mattered most. Change was never easy, but it was always possible. And under Marcus's leadership, the company was no longer just a workplace. It was a team, a vision, and a future defined by respect, integrity, and excellence. Weeks passed, and the company began to transform in ways that Marcus had envisioned. The once tense office was now alive with focus, collaboration, and a quiet energy of ambition. Employees moved with purpose, conversations were productive, and the team operated with a level of professionalism that had been missing before. Marcus walked through the office each morning, observing the changes, proud of the culture he had helped shape. He noticed subtle but important differences. Teams were taking initiative, offering solutions instead of waiting for instructions. Staff members who had once been hesitant to speak now contributed ideas confidently, and even the smallest achievements were recognized and celebrated. Marcus understood that culture wasn't built overnight. It was shaped by daily actions, consistent leadership, and a shared understanding of values. The new hires had integrated seamlessly with the remaining staff. Their presence brought fresh ideas, renewed energy, and a visible sense of accountability. Marcus had carefully selected each person not just for their skills, but for their alignment with the company's core principles: respect, integrity, and professionalism. Their influence was evident. Old habits were fading, replaced by standards that inspired everyone to perform their best. During a midweek meeting, Marcus addressed the entire office. "I am proud of the progress we have made," he said, his voice calm but firm. "We have faced challenges, and we have made tough decisions. But today, we are stronger, more focused, and more united. Each of you has contributed to this transformation, and I want you to understand the value of your role in our success." Employees listened intently. Some nodded in agreement. Others exchanged glances that reflected shared pride. Marcus continued, "Leadership is not about authority alone. It is about vision, accountability, and integrity. It is about creating an environment where everyone can thrive while upholding the values that define us. I want this company to be a place where excellence is the standard, not the exception." After the meeting, teams returned to their projects with renewed enthusiasm. Marcus walked among them, offering guidance and encouragement. He stopped to speak with Laura, one of the new hires who had already become a key contributor. "Your input on the recent project was excellent," he said. "I appreciate the way you encourage collaboration while maintaining high standards. It sets a positive example for everyone here." Laura smiled, clearly motivated by his words. "Thank you, Marcus. I feel like I can really contribute here, and it's inspiring to see the culture you've built." The positive energy in the office was tangible. Employees were not just working, they were engaged, motivated, and proud of their contributions. Marcus knew that this was the result of deliberate decisions, careful recruitment, and a consistent approach to leadership. Respect and accountability had replaced fear and complacency. The company was thriving, not just in productivity, but in spirit. By late afternoon, Marcus received an email from a client praising the efficiency and professionalism of a recent project. He shared the message with the team, acknowledging their hard work. "This," he said, "is the impact of dedication, teamwork, and respect for one another. When we work together with integrity, success follows naturally." Marcus spent the next hour reviewing ongoing projects. The office operated smoothly, communication was clear, and each employee knew their responsibilities. He felt a deep sense of satisfaction. The difficult decisions he had made weeks earlier, the firings, the restructuring, and the recruitment of a new team, had not only corrected past problems, but had laid the foundation for sustainable success. Later, Marcus held a one-on-one meeting with Jonathan, the senior manager who had struggled with respect and accountability in the past. "I can see your growth," Marcus said, his tone encouraging. "You have embraced the changes, and your team has responded positively. Leadership is about learning and adapting. You've shown that you are capable of doing both." Jonathan nodded, clearly relieved and motivated. "Thank you, Marcus. I've learned a lot from this experience. I want to continue contributing to the company's success and uphold the standards you've set." Marcus smiled faintly. "That is exactly what I hope to hear. Leadership is a journey, and growth is part of that process. Keep leading by example, and others will follow." As the evening approached, Marcus reflected on the transformation he had overseen. The office that had once been tense, uncertain, and divided was now a hub of collaboration, respect, and productivity. The staff understood the value of integrity, accountability, and professionalism. The company's reputation, internally and externally, was stronger than ever. Marcus looked out over the city skyline from his office window. The lights of the buildings mirrored the vibrancy of his company, each shining individually yet contributing to the larger picture. Just as the city thrived through order, effort, and purpose, so too had his company grown stronger under disciplined leadership. He thought back to the moment he had been asked to wait outside the boardroom, the moment that had revealed the true state of the company's culture. What had started as a small act of disrespect had become the catalyst for major change. Marcus realized that leadership required not just patience, but courage. The courage to make difficult decisions and the wisdom to guide the team toward a better future. That evening, as the office emptied and the city settled into its nighttime rhythm, Marcus felt a quiet sense of fulfillment. He had faced prejudice, skepticism, and doubt, yet he had acted decisively, built a strong team, and reshaped the company's culture. The results were clear: a workplace defined by respect, integrity, and excellence, where employees thrived, and the company's success was sustainable. Marcus knew the journey was ongoing. Challenges would arise, new projects would test the team, and maintaining the culture would require constant attention. But he was ready. He had proven that leadership, when exercised with vision, clarity, and courage, could transform not just a company, but the people within it. As he prepared to leave, Marcus glanced around the office one last time. The energy, the focus, and the quiet pride in his employees' faces were all evidence that the changes were lasting. The company was no longer held back by disrespect or complacency. It had become a team united by shared values and guided by a leader who was not afraid to take action when it mattered most. Marcus turned off the lights, stepping out into the city night. The skyline stretched endlessly before him, full of possibilities and promise. He knew that with determination, vision, and courage, the company and its people would continue to rise. Leadership had been tested, and it had succeeded. For Marcus, the journey had not been easy, but the results were undeniable. Respect, accountability, and professionalism were no longer just ideals. They were the foundation of a thriving, successful company. And under his leadership, the future looked brighter than ever.